Hey, listen, we all know what it's like to have shelves full of self-help books, maybe Instagram reel lists saved that we'll implement in the future. Maybe it's a YouTube watch later playlist that you never get back to, or endless screenshots of inspiration and all those saved posts. But yet, with all of that information, we still feel the worst feeling in the world, stuck. And what if I told you that all of this quote unquote growth content might actually be keeping you from the transformation that you're seeking? Well, welcome back to the Mind is Your Show. This is the place where entrepreneurs discover that true scaling isn't about hacks or tactics. It's about aligning your mindset, your message, and your marketing to create sustainable growth that feels authentic and aligned to who you are while loving yourself, your customers, and your results in the process. My job and our job is to cut through the noise to help you build a business that matters and to make money doing it. And in today's episode, we get real. I call myself up, but we talk about why more transformation is not the answer, the uncomfortable truth about real growth, how to turn your knowledge that you receive into real change, how to break free from what we call the entertainment trap. Because here's the thing, true transformation is not about what you know, it's about who you become. And today we're going to show you exactly how to bridge that gap. So I mean this from the bottom of my heart. You should never push back on this content. One of my favorite quotes is, a student says, I already know, and a master says, thanks for the reminder. But I think it's important to acknowledge that the results we have in this life come from the work that we're willing to put in. And I realized that even recording this episode, I needed the medicine more than anybody else. And now it's something that I look forward to and I'm excited about. And so if you are tired of knowing what to do but not doing it, if you're ready to move from consumption to creation, if you want real change but not more information, if you realize that you've learned these things but your results stay the same, this episode is for you. 92% of people that set New Year's resolutions fail by February. Only 10% of self-help book readers report lasting change. And 87% of learning without the application is forgotten within 30 days. And I share in this episode exactly how to do this, a framework to implement it, why it matters to drastically change your results. So without further ado, let's get into the show, and I can't wait to hear what you think. Let's be really blunt about it. What is the difference between knowing something and embodying something? Because think about it. Podcasts, books, master classes, masterminds, YouTube videos, we've all learned the same things. We are more informed with more access to information than forever. And if that's the case, then why does our life still feel the same, both internally and externally? And truthfully, it comes down to one painful truth that I've had to give myself in the past, which is because I'm not really committed to growth. I was more so being entertained by growth. And so if you find yourself just like me, because I don't think we're ever immune to this, constantly consuming content, looking for new ideas, looking for new dopamine hits, looking for new books, but still feeling stuck, this episode is your loving reminder to call you out and call you up, because it is mine for myself. Because at some point, we have to recognize that the obsession with growth becomes the greatest excuse not to change. Our obsession with being different becomes the thing that prevents us from being different or growing. And this is something, like I said, I don't think any of us are immune to, but I get asked this question a lot. Like, what's the difference between knowing something and embodying something, right? And I think as a human being, my belief is that our job is to grow, because if we're not growing, we're dying. And this means we're growing in our business, we're growing in our perspective, we're growing in our capacity, we're growing in our relationships, we're growing in our friendships. And it's really, really important. But I think there's a massive difference. And there's one that I fell victim to for so long, thinking that growth was about knowing more. And I've said this on a podcast in the past, where I was taught for so many years that knowledge was power. And if you're watching this on video, you see me playing like a scale in my hands, where knowledge was power. But I've learned in my life through some incredible mentors, my own life lessons, my own successes, that knowledge isn't actually power. Knowledge is potential power. Applied knowledge or integration is power. Us putting the reps in, us becoming the person, us embodying it, is what makes the biggest difference in our life. And even on today's topic, this, are we committed to growth or are we entertained by it? This can be in any area in our life. It can be with our fitness. It can be with our friendship. It can be with our partner. It can be with our business. It can be with our leadership skills. It could be with a skill set that we haven't picked up yet. It could be with our coaching. It could be with our parenting. It could be anywhere. but we have to become aware of which bucket we're in so that we can actually actively pursue that growth, because we live in a time in 2025 where we have infinite access to everything. We have 24/7 access, if we'd like it, to podcasts, to webinars, to courses, to influencers, to television, to you name it. We can consume right now more personal development, mindset, business, success content at the tips of our fingers for free, and even have AI spit it out to us than we've ever been able to before. But the information that we're looking for is there to transform us. And transformation doesn't come from inputs, it comes from integration. Because if information was enough, I would submit that we would all be billionaires with six packs or whatever other one, but that's the easy one to make up. Like, we have access to all that information of how they did it and why they did it and how they eat and how they don't eat and what they work out with and why they work out and X, Y, and Z. But if information was the only thing that was needed, we'd all be billionaires with six packs. And I think what happened for me, and I can't speak for you, and I can't assume for you, but I know for me, a really easy way to realize when I was more entertained by growth than I was committed to it is because I was getting a dopamine hit. Every single time I would learn something new, I'd learn a new personal development thing, I'd learn a new neurolinguistic programming thing. I'm like, that's a better question as a leader. Oh, there's a way that I haven't done this before. I can learn a new process. I can learn a new strategy. And if you've known me for any period of time, you realize that I have accolades galore because I was chasing the dopamine hit. And I think it's important for us. And like I said, this podcast is about me speaking to myself, but if it resonates and it fits, then it's for you too. But the dopamine hit of learning, where I was convinced that consuming felt productive. And there is something to be said about that. I think consuming and learning can be productive and it can be positive, but not if it's infringing the growth, not if it's getting in the way of the integration, not if it's just another input that never gets installed into my life, into my body, into my heart, into my mind, into my soul. And so the question to sit with here is, if we were asking ourselves one self reflective question and we wanted to make it really, really simple, in these core areas in our life, are we actually growing or are we collecting? Are we growing or are we collecting? Because I think it really boils down to growth is growing and collecting is entertainment. And entertainment does not leave us to the permanent results that we want. It doesn't lead us to the destination that we're seeking. And I think the easiest way to distinguish those two paths is to identify what they are. The entertainment path, right? This is the collecting path. This is the one where we're entertained. What is it? It's very passive. It's kind of, oh, I'll do it when I want to do it. Like, I'll pick up a book and I'll finish it when I'm done, right? Like, I'll go to the gym when I feel like it, right? It's passive. It feels good, right? It doesn't make us stretch. It doesn't feel hard. It doesn't feel heavy. It feels good. It's like buying the books and putting them on the shelf. It feels good because it's hard to read them sometimes, or it's like laying out your workout clothes the night before, but not going to the gym. The prep part feels good because it's passive, right? That's the entertainment path. And what happens on the entertainment path is it creates this false confidence. We convince ourselves that the book on our shelf is going to read itself. We convince ourselves, as I look over at my running shoes, that my running shoes are going to run the run for me, right? Or I just learned this new model in my business. So because I've learned it, it's now going to install itself with my team or with my process. And so the entertainment path, it's passive, it feels good, but it creates this false confidence with that dopamine, convincing us that we've made progress. And it avoids discomfort because there's always another thing to learn and another thing to do, but it never gets put into the process of being installed. That's the entertainment path. The growth path is the path that we're all after. I would submit, by listening to this podcast or even having these conversations or having these thoughts, this is what we're called to. It's this growth, right? But this requires embodiment. It feels inconvenient. It involves massive, massive amounts of repetition under pressure. And most of the time, if I had to label it, I would label it boring or painful. Not that either of those are bad and wrong, but I would label the growth path boring or painful. And it's really easy to see when you're stuck in entertainment. If any of those things I said resonated, then you could be stuck in entertainment, just like I get stuck in entertainment. Some days momentarily, some for days, some for weeks, some for months, some for even years, if I'm being radically honest. Okay. But there's some really easy ways to spot these symptoms. Number one is like you buy the books and don't read it. You take 10 courses and don't finish one. You hire 3 coaches who all tell you the same thing, but then you say it doesn't work and you blame the coach and you're right back to bay one. You repeat affirmations to yourself over and over and over and over, but your behavior doesn't change, right? Or there's this trap of you're constantly working on yourself, constantly in I need to improve this, I need to improve this, I need to improve this. But then if you look at the results, the same cycles are repeating over and over and over again. Those are really easy symptoms to see when you're stuck in the entertainment cycle. And this is what reminds me, I think I've said it on the podcast already, but I heard this incredible yoga teacher in Vegas say this. He said, your words are who you want to be, your actions are who you are. And there's this point where that's really, really the biggest difference between entertainment and growth. Is entertainment are the things that we talk and we say to ourselves and to other people that we're doing, but growth are the things that we're being. They're the actions that we're taking where we're allowing those actions to speak for themselves. And like I said a minute ago, the growth path is typically really easy to spot because it means we actually have to be the person we're speaking about. It feels inconvenient. Some days getting up at 5 a.m., hitting those steps. Some days, even as hard as this is, prioritizing my prayer. Some days prioritizing my stillness time when I want to sleep, or skipping that chocolate cake because it's not in my macros. Like, it feels inconvenient. And it doesn't just solve itself once. Like, I can tell you this all day with food. Just because I skipped the chocolate cake on Friday doesn't mean that like I'm forever going to skip it. I have to skip it Friday, Friday night at midnight, Saturday morning at 2 a.m., Saturday morning at 5 a.m., Saturday morning for breakfast, Sunday. And I have to repeatedly skip that chocolate cake, which feels massively inconvenient and truthfully is boring. And I've convinced myself it's painful. It's really easy to spot when we are on the growth path. And I think it's important because the easiest way to remember this is growth is never proven by what you know, only by what you live. Just like the yoga teacher said, our words are who we want to be, our actions are who we are. And if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, I could give you hundreds of stories about myself here. Some of you know, if you even go back and watch the podcast 2.5 years ago, I was 100 pounds heavier than I am now. There's a part in business where in January 2020, which I've been open about, where I was quote unquote crushing absolutely everything. I was a New York Times best-selling cookbook author, teaching people a paleo lifestyle, but I was still purging and bulimic and struggling with weight and body image issues because I was so committed to quote unquote doing the right things and being addicted to growth. I was reading all the books. I was going to all the masterminds. I was at the events. I was getting all the certifications. I was telling people all the things that I was doing, except I was too busy telling people and I wasn't being any of them. And the biggest, I'm going to get a little emotional in this, but the biggest catalyst was my son. Because as a very young child, or if you're a parent, you've ever had a very young child, you recognize that they don't understand our words. They don't speak our language yet. But they do watch and learn from our behaviors. And I realized that I was in this cycle of being addicted to knowledge consumption, but none of that knowledge consumption broke the pattern. The consumption didn't do anything. The courage to follow the growth path is what really, really changed what I had to do. And I knew what to do. Like, I knew the fork didn't make me fat. I knew that I had to change how I ate. I knew that I had to actively commit to my body. I knew I had to focus on my sleep. But I wasn't willing to do it. I wasn't willing to pay the price of what it was going to cost me because that growth meant surrender. It meant death to some degree. It meant an identity shift. It meant this massive letting go of this version of George that I had spent my whole life convincing the world existed. And I was petrified. Petrified to the point where I feel like this podcast is the greatest summary, just the topic of the struggles that I faced for decades, silently, publicly, because I had basically gaslit myself that the more entertained I was by growth, the more I was actually growing. And what I ended up losing was massive amounts of time because I never picked up the weight and put in the rep to have the result. I just kept collecting more weights for the weight room. I collected more books for the shelf. I collected more things that I could do or grow in, and I never put any into practice. I never put any recipes in the oven. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about this topic of, are we entertained by growth or are we committed to growth? Because true growth means like surrendering to some degree to our ego, right? If you're a person of faith like myself, it's surrendering our ego to the will of God. It's relinquishing this illusion of control, and it means being obedient, right? Like for me, even before I was saved, it was being obedient to that inner voice. I was like, yeah, you should go for a walk right now. You should do this in business. You should follow this idea. You should make that video. You should learn that skill. Even though it was inconvenient, there was a path of growth there that ended up supporting me massively. And now for me, it's on the other side. It's navigating this incredible life of faith and giving all glory to God, which I love wholeheartedly. But there's still this path of, my Bible tells me it's a narrow road to heaven. It's, if somebody asks you to walk 1 mile, you walk 2. You spend your time giving what you don't have. There's parables that Jesus taught about, if somebody sues you for your tunic, we'll give them your other stuff as well. And it's the same thing. It's this path of being committed to growth. Oftentimes it feels inconvenient. Oftentimes it feels repetitive, boring, and painful. Oftentimes it doesn't have the immediate dopamine payoff. And what I've learned, and I'm still learning, is that instead of having the short dopamine payoff, you get a payoff forever when you're committed to your growth. And so the question is, how do you apply this? If you're interested, if this resonates with you, if this even makes sense to you, because I feel like I could just be talking to myself and this turns into a podcast episode that was George's own therapy. Okay. So where do you apply this? Where do you go from being entertained by learning or entertained by growth instead of committed to growth? Right? So there's really, really 2 ways. We can be committed to it or we can be entertained by it. And I think it boils down into like 4 simple steps. Step number 1 is you have to ask yourself, and only you can answer this. What is that one thing that you keep learning about, but you've not embodied? That one thing where you keep finding a same way to go back to it, a same way to go learn about it, but you haven't embodied it. Because in order to shift it, you have to be aware of it. So what's that one thing? For me, it was my weight for a long time. My weight roller coastered up and down 100 pounds 3 to 4 times over the course of 15, 20 years. Now it's steady and solid, and it's been like this for the last couple of years, and it's not changing anymore. So you have to ask yourself, question number 1, what's one thing that you keep learning about, but you haven't embodied? Question number 2, this one tickles. What's one uncomfortable action that you've been avoiding, even though you know it's the key? What's one uncomfortable action that you've been avoiding, even though you know it's the key? Putting your phone down at 8:30 p.m. and laying in bed until you fall asleep instead of doom scrolling. I've avoided that one. I avoided it the other night after a flight. It cost me dearly. Meal prepping, knowing that if you don't do it, you won't eat consistently. Great, do it. Eliminating the sweets and junks and temptation out of the house. Great, do it. Taking the time to actually write those emails that you've been putting off, that you've been thinking about, that keep moving from to-do list to do list. Great, do it. So question number 2 is, what's the one uncomfortable action that you've been avoiding, even though you know it's the key? So step 1, question 1, What's the one thing that you keep learning about but not embodying? Question 2, what's the one uncomfortable action that you've been avoiding in that thing, even though you know it's the key? Which brings us to step number 3. I want you to pick one of those things from the last 30 days, one of those things that you've learned about, one of those things that you've consumed, one of those clips that you've saved, one of those reels, maybe even one of these podcast episodes, if it was helpful for you, right? Pick one of them. And my invitation for you is to live that piece for the next 7 days. That one thing. Pick up that key. But when I say live it, that means if you're like, man, I've been really putting off my steps and my sleeping routine, that means for the next 7 days, there's no negotiating. There's nothing but embodiment. There's nothing but putting the reps in. It's going to feel inconvenient, potentially. It's going to feel boring, potentially. It's going to feel painful, potentially. It's not going to have the immediate dopamine hit, but it's going to have a long-term forever payoff. So my invitation for you is to pick one of those things, just one, and for the next 7 days, become that person. And I want you to remember that your success, your growth, and being committed to your growth instead of entertainment comes down to stop looking for new keys to the door and start using the key that you already have over and over and over. And what I want you to do, and I invite you to do this, email me, DM me, text me if you have my phone number. Tell me what that thing is that you're going to be doing for 7 days. Tell me. I want to know, because I think it's important to close with this, that growth oftentimes is never sexy in the process. It's sacred, and so are the results that it creates. Growth does not ask for our thinking. It doesn't ask for our intellect. Instead, growth demands our integrity. It doesn't demand our intellect or our thinking. It demands our integrity with ourself, our integrity with our vision, our integrity with our source. For me, that's God and Jesus Christ. Our integrity with the best version of ourselves, our integrity that our actions match our words, that we're living and defining ourselves by our actions. That's what growth demands. Growth demands our integrity. And so I want to say this with love because I'm challenged recording this episode. If this episode challenged you, good, because it challenged me. I'm in the middle of a fast right now. I've been inconsistent with a few things. There's some things I've been choosing the convenient passive route because it's easier and I feel called out on my own stuff. Because the bridge between knowing and becoming starts with awareness, and then it's built one decision at a time. And so this episode, this podcast is your invitation to build it today. And so I want you to tell me what it is that you're committed to, or if you want my help doing this as a coach, which is what I help so many of my clients do, either reach out on the form on our website or shoot me a message on Instagram. But either way, I invite you to embody one thing for the next 7 days that your future self would come back and thank you for. And that's what I wanted to share today, because information is not the transformation you're looking for. The application is. Growing, and I'll be honest with you, can often feel boring, quiet, and hard. And also constantly being addicted to consuming new things or learning new things or being in personal development is avoidant. And it's entertaining. But entertaining soothes, and our growth stretches us, and we want to get stretched because it helps us be stronger. And so this is the invitation for all of us. Become the change. Become that person. Put the reps in and have a beautiful day. So remember that relationships will always beat algorithms. This has been another episode of the Mind of George Show. You'll either see me in the next episode or you'll hear me in your earballs. But either way, we're out.